Hello and welcome to Do Human Work, the podcast that looks at the future of cybersecurity through the lens of AI. I am your host, Nate Burke, CMO at 7AI, and joined here in Austin, Texas with...
Lior Div. Howdy. I said it right?
You said it right.
Okay.
Our guest today is Wayman Cummings, Chief Information Security Officer at Ochsner Health Systems. He is a cybersecurity veteran who's passionate about mentorship, team empowerment, and the three words that seem to define his approach are team, partnership, and growth. So the last time we did this, we talked about the like Super Bowl robot thing. You want to still talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, as we look at the capabilities that are being generated by the use of AI, and I love to call it augmented intelligence. And a great example is during the last Super Bowl, Ochsner had these robots that the kids in our hospital had a little remote control, and they could drive them around. They had somebody with them to make sure they weren't running over feet and toes. And they could drive them around and they could interact with the people at the facility. They got to talk to players. They got to talk to coaches, media.
In the Super Bowl.
At the Super Bowl,
yeah.
Not during the Super Bowl. They weren't out on the field. We didn't get permission for that one. Next time. But it was during Super Bowl week, because there's always that week that leads up. And so it was an amazing use of this technology that the children were able to interact with and allow them to be part of that. So when I think about the future of AI beyond kind of our cyber world, I think about things like that where we're empowering, the disabled, we're empowering, the sick to be able to do more. Obviously, from a cybersecurity perspective, I'm looking at is how is it going to augment us, be more effective at looking at these threats and risks? Because we're at a point where in one day, there are so many threats. There is like no way I could have 1,000 people and they're never going to curate all this. So
it's fascinating when we think about it, because many people have different feeling about AI. It's like, I'm afraid, I believe that this is the future. It's going to replace everybody. And I think that you have a very unique approach of saying, if I understand correctly, that it's like, okay, it's here to stay. So now let's integrate it in a smart way. So let's not let Skynet to take over.
Unless we're in charge of Skynet.
Yes, that's different. So what's your take about kind of, I do believe that hackers going to leverage AI in order to attack us. And it's like, and then there is the cat and mouse game. It's like, who is faster?
Mm-hmm.
And Ochsner is a very specific type of organization. It's like, what is your point of view about how leveraging AI in order to, enable you guys to be better?
Going back to the beginning of threats and everything we've dealt with, the malicious side has never really had much of an issue working together. It's us on the defender side that have really struggled with a partnership, working together to address these kind of risks. So I look at this as a way to, again, I use augmented intelligence often, but it's going to help us empower and grow people. People think it's going to replace them. And it is going to replace some people, but it's going to create the ability for them to do a higher level function. It's going to allow them to be able to go, I've never been able to look at something this way. Now I can, because I've got this tool that can help me look at it from a different angle.
It's funny that you mentioned kind of the fact that on the defense side, people are not work. So it's like, hey, we are a vendor, but I hate this word because I don't view us as somebody that it's like their job is to squeeze and sell something to somebody. I think that that's the old days. It's like the new days, it's like, it's really about, it's like, okay, how do we understand together what is the outcome that you need to achieve? And then how can we achieve it together? But I think that it's easily can be extended to kind of sharing information and sharing good practices. This is kind of the reason that we're doing this podcast, to share as much as we can about the knowledge that we are accumulating through all of those interactions that we have with people like you, to be honest.
I had an interesting conversation earlier before I got here, and it was with a particular vendor, and they have a really good product. I mean, it's really some cutting edge from an Intel side. And I love my Intel side. And he said, but we won't integrate it with anybody else. And I said, then there's no reason for us to even talk. I said, if we can't work together and you can't work with the tooling that I have in place, what value are you? You know, partnership. And again, I talk a lot about partnerships. I don't like vendors. I like partners. And partners, if we're going to have a partnership, just like any partnership, is we're going to have problems. We're going to have disagreements. We're going to argue about stuff maybe, but we're all going to work towards a common goal. And if we work towards a common goal, then we both achieve what we need to. And a lot of people give lip service to the word partnership. And unfortunately, you know, not that many really enact it. I will say you have been a good partner through the years that I've known you.
So far,
I haven't fired you.
So your career has taken you from IBM to Cisco and now Ochsner Health. And so that is enterprise tech, defense contracting, food service, and healthcare. Walk us through what made you decide to make each of these moves?
You know, so IBM was my first job, my first big boy job out of school. And I went into it and I thought, you know what? It's a big company. I'm going to do this for a couple of years and then I'll figure out where I want to go. And frankly, IBM just gave me the opportunity to keep changing jobs about every 2 years. So I kept doing something new. And I realized through those iterations that it was very difficult to get the people who needed to understand risk effectively. Like I couldn't communicate with those people. And those were the people that controlled the money.
interesting.
And so, you know, I had the opportunity to come to Ochsner. Healthcare was another new area for me to come into. And, you know, when I look at companies that I want to work with, I look for purpose. What is this company doing? What are they bringing to society? And healthcare, you know, Ochsner's mission is to bring healthcare to the poorest people in the Gulf South. And I'm like, okay, I can get behind this. And so again, you know, I went in with eyes open, probably financially not going to have the funding that it needs. So let's find a way to be effective with that. And I think that's what gets lost with a lot of companies is people like me will come in and they're like, I need 10 million here. I need another 15 here and give me 50 million and we'll make this great. Well, you know what? How about you do it on 5 million in tools and you figure out ways to hire the right people and get it moving along. And I think that, you know, I love the opportunity that Ochsner has given me and, you know, it'd be part of helping to protect people.
We know each other for many years, and I had a very interesting observation when I met your team, and I know that each and every one of them you handpicked, and over there it was like a few that I looked at it and I said, "That's interesting background." It's like, can you share with us a little bit? You know, I know the end of the story, but it will be fascinating to see kind of the thought process.
You know, I think sometimes we look for people who are like, oh, they've been in cybersecurity or they have a cybersecurity degree or they have whatever, you know. And I look for people that think a unique way. I look for people that are open-minded. I have a question I ask everybody in an interview. How did you play with your toys as a child? And what book is on your nightstand? And of course, now I got to go, or on your reader
iPad,
or your iPad or something else.
So fun.
It gives me insight into how you think. So if you were destructive with your toys and you would find ways to soup them up or blow them up, more than likely you're an analyst. If you were trying to re-engineer them and construct them in a new way, I like engineering in that. And if you were organizing your toys and you kept them in order or whatever, you're kind of a project manager mindset. And what I always tell them afterwards, it is not that you have to be a project manager, you have to be an analyst or this, but your mind's wired in a certain way. Now, the thing about the book is almost like a litmus test. So a lot of people will be like, I'm reading, you know, whatever latest great technology book. And that they're trying to answer what they think I want them to answer. What I want to find out is how vulnerable they are. Because if we're vulnerable to being wrong. Then I started taking it a little further and I said, you know, I need to understand how threat actors work. And, you know, we have a lot of websites, we have a lot of things that are out there to tell us this. And I had a young lady that was interested in changing her career. She worked for the FBI. She was an analyst for them, and her job was to kind of track cartels and who was affiliated with who, their movements, et cetera, something along those lines. And I said, all right, how about you apply that same methodology to all the threat actors out there? Because ultimately, as we look at our threat actors, they may not be tied together to a nation state, but there's loose affiliations. And then there's hierarchies of who's the top, the cartels, the nation states, then who are their distributors, and I won't say any names of him to give him any airtime, but, the next level and on and on. And so she started doing that and started categorizing their movements, what their TTPs. Then we brought another person in from the NSA, or she was retiring from the military, and she had spent her time at NSA. And I said, start hunting based on what she's finding. Mm-hmm. And we started seeing precursors to attacks that none of our tooling gave us. So when I think about AI, it's taking those ideas and kind of turning them into that so that my people can use the incredible skills that both of these two young ladies had. And there's another one I tell you about who was a elevator mechanic.
Okay.
He is a diesel mechanic, elevator mechanic. And his fiance was one of the coaches back in the day when I used to work out. Now I eat food professionally. And she's like, can you talk to him? And I'm like, sure, I'll talk to him. And so he's like, I've taught myself. He goes, I just downloaded all these tools. I taught myself Python. I taught myself this. I've learned about this. And I asked him all my questions. And I'm like, this guy's an engineer. And he is hungry and he wants to do this. And so I had one of my guys send him a Raspberry Pi. And I said, give him a test. If he can code whatever you ask him to code, I'll hire him. And so, of course, HR lost their mind when I said I'm hiring somebody with no experience who literally has been a grease monkey who is now going to be a cyber engineer. And he ended up, he became a director of a fintech company because he was amazing at his job. And what I've found is that if you look beyond the paper resume and you get to understand the way a person thinks, you can find out, do they fit with my team? Are they open-minded? Are they going to have that mindset of, I'll fail fast, but I'll get to a solution.
And I'll be vulnerable and I'll expose myself in order to learn and adapt as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
For me, it's fascinating because I did many things in my life, not high-tech before. And what I realized that the best team, operational team in the field is actually teams that they are a mix of capability and background. And it's like when you dig in, you see that everybody is like very, very different, that's coming from a different background, have different capabilities. But eventually, once you manage to combine them together into one unit, it's actually generating something that I call it magical. Mm-hmm. It's literally a synergy, kind of the sum is greater than its part in this case. And I think that this is kind of what you manage to excel building in those teams. And it's fascinating for me, but now when I'm thinking about it, it's like, how can we integrate AI into these, teams? Because it's not just human, as you said, we need to augment that thing. What's your point of view about it?
So again, back to kind of the example I gave with taking what the two young ladies had built for me, is taking those kind of models and then giving them to people who are, newer in their development, newer in their growth in cyber, and letting them learn from those outcomes. One of the things my dad always told me was, make sure you know what anyone who works for you does. AI is going to work for me. Yep. I need to know what it's doing. My 17-year-old daughter came in and I'm like, did you finish your paper? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, really? I go, who wrote it? She goes, ChatGPT wrote it. I'm like, well, that's cheating. And she's like, no, it's not. It's using technology. And I thought, hey, I guess I can't argue that completely. And so I made her pull out the paper and we went through it. And she goes, no, I changed that. No, I changed that. I changed that. And I changed that. To me, that is the right use of these enablements. My fear is we get to a point where we don't invest enough energy into building up new people. Like, I'm old. I learned by reading and tearing systems apart. Mm-hmm. I figured out how to write any exploit code I wanted to. I've made the statement, and I stand by this: nothing's unhackable. give me enough time, or give the right person enough time, not me anymore. I have no patience. But with enough time, we can get through it. We don't have that for a lot of the new kids that are coming up. So we need to find a way to make sure that we're teaching them to know what the tools are doing for them. And I think that's incumbent upon us as an industry, the cyber industry. But it's also from a business perspective, we have to invest in our future, or our future is going to be grim.
It's fascinating because when we started to build this company and this product, part of the thing that I said to my team is, I have to see it in order to believe that it's doing the right thing. And they looked at me, it's like, it solved the problem. It's like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, step by step, I have to see it. Because my point of view, it's really about trust. It's like, I can't trust something that I don't understand. But if I understand and I can see the work, and I can review it with my eyes, I can develop trust in that thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think that right now in the AI era, there is kind of many, vendors or people that create technology that actually asking people to trust something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, no, trust is earned. You can't just trust the thing. It's like you need to validate. And the combination of really understand how people think and develop trust and ingrain that thing and build it into the system that we build, I think that will eventually enable us to integrate the thing together. Because your daughter, when she was, ChatGPT spit out those things, but she read it, analyze it, and say, okay, this is good, this is not good. It's like, okay, I understand what ChatGPT did, I understand what the outcome that I need to achieve. Okay, I integrated basically my knowledge and the ChatGPT knowledge. It just happened faster.
Yeah.
And I love this example.
I was surprised because I thought for sure she just had to write it. You're like, doom, done. And I think that is what we're not selling AI effectively enough about is that like, even when you think about, just take cyber out of the equation. Let's look at technological challenges. When we go and we have a system that's not performing effectively, healthcare has these mega environments and they're very proprietary. We have issues with power utilization, CPU, memory. To be able to use AI to go crawl through there and figure out what is actually causing this problem, will keep us from creating more cyber threats. Because what generally happens is the IT guys go, dang it, that tool's blocking it, exempt it. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, it's working fine. They didn't solve the problem, but they took the security tool out of the equation. Now it's at risk, and that potentially becomes, the source of a future incident. So I see a lot of application where it can help us do our jobs better. And my only concern is that we make sure the money people, so our CFOs, our CEOs, our boards, understand this is not just to replace people. This is to make them more effective and to make us better at what we're doing.
It's a different take. One of the people that was sitting here and we kind of asking question said, oh, it's going to happen. And in his mind, like 3 years were there. It's like things are changing completely. And we're debating internally, to be honest. I don't know. If I could predict the future, it's like I had a different business.
Yeah.
So I can't. But
we had that conversation earlier.
Exactly. But the question is like, how fast? And one thing that I know for sure, that these things is happening faster than I thought.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm asking myself, like, really, how fast do you think that we are going to be in this point that it's like everything will be interconnected and AI will, affect one thing from security to non-security and so on and so forth?
I don't disagree. I think we're a lot closer than we think. When we think about information right now, our information is so interconnected. Our systems are so interconnected. We have my PhD that I never did was always on predictive analysis. I love statistics. I love probabilities of occurrence. And so I had this theory that if I had enough data points, I could become predictive. And I'd take the past to predict the future. And my wife told me that she'd probably kill me if I went back to school. So we save that for, but I think somebody's already moved beyond that, because when you look at your phone, everybody thinks my phone's listening to me. It's listening to me. No, it's not. It has enough data points to go, I think Wayman would really like some Tide Pods. And it may be because we bought Tide Pods, we were in somewhere or whatever. There's a lot of algorithms that fit in that. And so I think we're at that point where now we can apply AI to it. Now, I don't like the intrusive nature of going, oh, we can watch everything we do, but it helps us to, again, it goes back to that augmented statement that I love to say. This augments our ability to be more effective. I can't remember half the things my wife tells me. So if AI wants to hook me up and make sure I know that when I went to the store, I was supposed to get those Tide Pods, God bless it.
And you become a better husband. There is a
See,
result.
look at this. AI is making us better husbands. So
this is a question that we ask everybody. What if, because of AI, suddenly you have 25% of your time back?
I would risk my wife's wrath and go back and work on the PhD.
Okay.
She would probably have other things for that 25%.
That's for sure.
But for me, yeah, I love learning. And like I said, as somebody asked me, like, when do you think I'll retire? And I really do have an answer. And the day that I decide that I'm unwilling to learn, then I'm going to retire, because I need to clear the shelf.
Good use of a time.
Yeah.
This time at 7AI, we basically decided to go outside of the box, but completely outside of the box. And usually when I'm talking about it, as people are saying, it's like, okay, it's not IT, it's a little bit, but it's like, I'm saying they're still staying inside kind of the general box. So when I'm saying outside of the box, it's like we draw inspiration out of 3-star Michelin restaurants. And the reason it's very simple, it's like the food is great. For sure, the food is great. But then it's like all kind of the surrounding that has to be perfect in order for them to reach to this kind of high level. And to be honest, we took it all the way to write a book about it, about how to build new companies in the age of AI with AI native. So when we draw inspiration, it's completely outside of the tech scene. So the question to you is kind of, where do you draw inspiration when you're thinking about kind of what you're doing, but not going into the tech area?
So I'm going to give you a two-part response to this. Part of this has been recently framed. So I'm going to give you that one, then I'm going to give you my inspiration about that. We had our executive retreat, and we had a speaker who wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. Yeah. And listening to him and listening to the stories about what he did at his restaurant, really, it was like, wow. I mean, it was, and we do a lot of these things in our life where, like, we see somebody, we help them across the street. We, I love paying for people's groceries or meals every now and then. Little things like that. But, I never really thought about it in the context of, is this a way of operating? So we brought that into Ochsner. And we're like, hey, we're going to focus on unreasonable hospitality. So inspiration-wise, and you asked me earlier about this journey of companies and why healthcare. The inspiration came from being a 12-year-old kid standing in a hospital many, many years ago. And I overheard the doctor talking to my mom. He said, I'm going to let him go home so he can spend one last Christmas with his sons. And I remember there was a nurse there, and she saw that I had heard this, and she kind of scurried me away and started making jokes and distracted me. And I really hadn't thought about this for a long time. And then my wife had a scare with breast cancer, and we go into the cancer center, and she had lost her mother to breast cancer. So, very emotional thing for her. And so she sits down, and the lady goes, all right, can I get your name? And she just loses it, just starts crying. The lady comes around, picks her up, or doesn't pick her up, puts her arm around her. Like, that'd be weird, tearing off your eye. Puts her arm around her, and then calls these nurses. The nurses come with her, and they whisk her off to the back. And I don't see her for another 45 minutes. So I'm just kind of sitting there like, all right. And I came out and I'm like, well, what did they do? And she's like, well, they all stayed with me, and they all talked to me the entire time. And I thought, wow, and then and I've got all kinds of stories like that from healthcare. And as you know, I've been dumb and broken a lot of things. So I've been put back together a lot. And the unreasonable hospitality mindset kind of came in there. And so I've told my teams, I'm like, at the end of the day, we are going to make sure, our role is to make sure that our clinical staff and our nurses can give that kind of treatment to our patients and their families.
It's very hard for me to explain how much I agree with you, because part of what we wrote in the book, there is a chapter about this exactly. Because I'm a big believer that in the age of AI, that everything is like done and it's like AI can do many things. The human element, we should never forget about that piece. So we actually created kind of a term, we call it PLAD, is people-led, AI-driven, meaning that we're going to lead. We're going to speak with you. We're going to interact with people. We're going to understand what people need. Then we're going to implement it with AI. But to be honest, it's like the human element, we should never forget about that.
Absolutely.
I've got 7 very quick lightning round questions.
Lightning round questions.
Ready?
Right.
All right. Number 1, what is the best career advice you ever received?
Always keep your resume up to date because you'll always do the right thing.
What is the worst trend in cybersecurity right now?
Worst trend.
Or worst trend, worst buzzword, worst thing that you're sick of hearing about? Any of those things?
AI. No, I'm kidding.
I love it. What book has influenced your leadership style the most?
Make your bed.
What is something you believed early in your career that you now think was naive or just wrong?
One thing? Oh my gosh.
That's why it's lightning.
There's a whole list. I think the biggest thing that I'm always right.
Yeah.
What is the most important lesson you learned from a failure?
To pick myself up and keep going.
What is one thing you wish everyone who aspires to become a CISO knew?
That you need to have humility in what you're doing. You need to focus on being present with your people and just work on communicating effectively the risk to the business.
Okay, last one. If you were not in cybersecurity at all and you were doing a completely different job, right? And so this is something where imagine yourself, you are on the cover of a magazine and you are doing this thing. And one of the people said they wanted to be a chef and they imagined themselves on the cover of Bon Appetit going head to head with Gordon Ramsay. And Lior wants to be a DJ. So we had him on the cover of Rolling Stone, right? So in your alternate dimension career, what cover of what magazine is Wayman on and what is he doing?
He is a hockey player.
Okay.
On ESPN. I'm one of those rare Texas people who love hockey and played hockey.
Okay. So first, it's a pleasure to have you now for real, in real life, not over Zoom, not remote recording. So thank you so much for being with us. It was like fantastic to have you here.
Likewise, I always enjoy our time together.
All episodes of Do Human Work are available at 7ai.com/podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please share, subscribe, and if you have suggestions for future guests, let us know at dohumanwork@7ai.com.